Let's explore the entire universe together and unleash our imagination and creativity. At birth, our first world is nestled in the warmth of our mother's embrace. This intimate space is the child's initial universe. Soon, the child ventures into the bedroom, a new realm to explore. Curiosity leads to the discovery of other rooms and the bustling kitchen, revealing the apartment as a larger world. The child then realizes the apartment is one of many in a towering building, and that building stands on a lively street. The street is part of a vibrant neighborhood which belongs to the sprawling districts of the capital city, the heart of an entire country.
Then he knows from geography that the country is one of several countries on the continent, and that the continent is not the only continent. So there are 4 continents. So he understands what is called the globe, and that the globe is just a planet of 9 planets. It revolves around the sun. Other than the Earth, there is Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune. All of them revolve around the sun, and that the solar system is not everything. Other than the sun, there are millions in a large, huge city called the Galaxy. And the solar group revolves around the outskirts of the galaxy, and there are millions of galaxies, each galaxy having 100,000 million suns. Each sun has a world. Then he will know that on the outskirts of galaxies there is a star that shines named Alcuzar. It reaches the power of radiation to give radiation like 100,000 million. Then at the last extent of science, it is an orphan. It is the last extent of view and the extent of science. To reach it, if we use the maximum known speed, which is the speed of light, 180 miles in seconds, we will reach after 1,000 million years.
Are there 7 heavens after that? Everything we talked about, which is how far we see with our devices, is one sky. So what is the secret of the 7? If we were able to teach these 7 as the 7 colors of the spectrum, the 7 degrees of the musical scale, the 7 electron beams around the atom, and the 7 months of the embryo necessary to complete and 7 days a week. The fact is that the number 7 is certainly a strange number with a secret, and the real numbers have secrets. For example, one number contains all the numbers inside it and can be divided into what is endless: a text, a quarter, a fifth, and others are divided inside it into all numbers, and it is accepted to infinity. Although it is itself a final number that ends, we also note that the axioms of calculation in addition, subtraction, and multiplication, we generate them without teaching. So children are born and they know that 1 + 1 = 2. Also, one of the wonderful things that have been discovered in the world of astronomy is that each star has birth, youth, old age, and pause 1s, death. A star dies in calm, and another star dies in a volumetric expansion, then a huge explosion, then a shrinkage. Another star dies of a huge sudden collapse in which it turns from a star with a diameter, for example, of 1,000 million kilometers to something of size like a hand fist. Thus, his hand will become the weight of the planet or star. A demon hole arises in space, calling them the black hole, and it reaches the strength of its gravitational field that it can swallow anything next to it like the sun. So, where does this thing go after swallowing it? They say to a crypt. So, where does this crypt go? Black holes are now one of the strange sciences of astronomy. Sometimes the star dies in another way. Instead of a complete collapse, a half of collapse occurs, and instead of shrinking, it shrinks halfway and its cycle shrinks. So, what is known as the pulsating star or the pulsating cycle happens. The issue is a mass issue in the first and the last is what determines the shape that will be produced. Whether it is a sun or a planet, then the fate and history of each star and how it dies and ends.
The strange thing is that each star of them is a comprehensive sending station that sends all the waves you imagine, in addition to the waves that send the visible light in the 7 spectra, namely the 7 colors of the spectrum and the invisible spectrum, ultraviolet and sub-red. The stars also emit radio waves as a radar and also emit winds that they call solar winds, like those emitted by the sun, which are waterfalls of huge electrons and very small parts of atoms.
We return to our solar group and take a small tour of this group and walk step by step. This distant star is the Sun as it seems from afar. If we leave the solar group, we will see the Sun in the form of a star among the stars. Let's imagine that we are now traveling to the Sun, and while we are coming, we pass through the planets. Everything we see next to the Sun are the planetary groups it has, such as Saturn, but our journey means the Sun itself personally. We approach it, and these are other planets, and these are other planets. Let's move quickly towards the Sun. Here is the Sun.
Our entire group began with a cloud of smoke, and the result of the act of gravity inside this smoke cloud led to the condensation of this cloud into large cores in the middle, from which the Sun appears later than TWEDs on the edges, which are vortexes that condense from which the planets appear. Gravity increases its grip and destroys the starry material of the Sun, so its temperature rises. Look, this vortex is from which the Earth, Mercury, Saturn, and all these will appear. Hydrogen bombs begin to erupt from inside the Sun, leading to this full glowing Sun that we know of. And at the same time, the planets around it began to be cool, and the world began to form. All this talk was 4,500 million or 5,000 million years ago. The planets began to cool down.
This is the first planet following the Sun, which is Mercury. Mercury, which is about the size of the Moon. We have about a quarter of the size of the Earth. There is no water, no air, and the surface has volcanic rock. The temperature reaches the point of melting lead during the day and at night. The cold is so extreme that iron turns into fragile glass from excessive cold. Its surface, as we said earlier, is volcanic rock, volcanic craters, and many rocks after the fall of meteorites. Venus is a cloud-coated planet with clouds and an atmosphere with 90 times the Earth's atmosphere, most of which is carbon dioxide. Because of this thick atmosphere and the abundance of carbon dioxide, the planet retains its terrible heat. So, the surface of Venus became a hellish environment, one that cannot sustain life. We come next to Earth, which seems like a moon of this planet. God has dedicated Earth to life, so it retains its air and water. It became air and water. And then as a result of the plants, the atmosphere changes from hydrogen and carbon dioxide to viable oxygen.
We now see in our travel, as if it were satellite photography, the North American continent clear, and these are huge areas of oceans. And the Earth, as we know, revolves around the Moon only, and it is a rocky surface with scars as a result of meteorites that fall on it. The Moon has no water, no life, no air.
After the Earth, we see the red planet, which is Mars. Mars is close to the size of the Earth, and what we see now is an ice cap on the Mars pole. Every more than 1,000 years to 25,000 years, the deviation of Mars changes relative to the Sun. This snowy clad melts with the electrodes and thin rivers and streams that can be photographed by telescopes. Therefore, it was said that there is the possibility of life on Mars, but in fact, there is still no life in it. After Mars, we see the rocks of a region called the asteroid region. This is a planet that is torn into a million parts that orbits in the areas of each part that has an ask orbit in it.
This great giant planet is Jupiter, and around it are 14 moons. This red spot on the planet is said to be a hurricane of space so that it can swallow the whole Earth. Jupiter is very thick, 1,000 times the thickness of the Earth. And this is Saturn. After we pass a number of millions of miles, we reach it, and around it beautiful rings, which are gravel and snow, meaning hydrogen frozen in the form of snow that continues to revolve around the planet in rings.
After traveling in space, millions of other miles, we reach another giant, Uranus, and around it, a ring or rings of light that reflects the light of the planet around the planet. Now we have reached Neptune, which follows Uranus, and with it the small moon Triton. Triton is so close to Neptune that they are the last giants before Pluto. Pluto is the last planetary group, and our information about it is very little. The cold there is almost unimaginable. So if we get out of Pluto, we enter the world of stars and the rest of the galaxy's stars. All this started with smoke and by gravity. So gravity is the strange secret that created and ruled the fate and history of the stars and determined their end. Question: if you say that the universe started all of smoke, then where did the smoke come from? They say that smoke is atoms that were generated in space, so much we don't know them.